is SMNI News Channel. Truth that matters.
Good evening, Philippines, and good day, world. I'm Vhal Divinagracia. It's Thursday, the 13th of July, 2023, and you're watching Newsline World. We're here to bring you the top stories we've gathered from all over the globe. First, in the latest episode of SMNI's The Deep Probe, Pastor Apollo C. Quiboloy discusses Kennedy Jr.'s The Peace speech and how it echoes in modern American society. North Korea confirms launch of solid-fuel intercontinental ballistic missile. The UN Security Council calls for an urgent meeting following North Korea's Hwasong-8 launch. We're not Amazon. This was the United Kingdom's defense minister's message to Ukraine, suggesting that they should adopt a less demanding tone to countries that are providing them weapons to fight against Russia. And the World Health Organization warns that the recent surge in bird flu outbreaks among mammals could help the virus spread more easily among humans. This and more for tonight's edition of Newsline World. In the news, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has witnessed a contract signing for the contract packages under the South Commuter Railway project. The president said the project will generate 3,000 job opportunities. He also ensured that assistance will be given to affected families amid railway system construction. Crisalyn Catarong reports.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has witnessed the contract signing between the Department of Transportation and the winning contractors for the contract packages under the South Commuter Railway project. The signing was held during a ceremony at the President's Hall in Malacanang Palace on July 13th. DOTR Secretary Jaime Bautista presented the project overview for the three contract packages, the S01, S03A, and S03C. Under the SCRP, which have a combined cost of more than 52 billion pesos. In his speech, President Marcos said the railway project is a realization of a more efficient and inclusive public transportation system. The chief executive also stated that around 3,000 job opportunities are expected to be generated at the start of the South Commuter Railway project, which is under the North-South Commuter Railway system. The president believes the project will lead to the goal of the government to serve around 800,000 commuters daily within the next 6 years. The civic contract packages cover a combined length of 14.9 kilometers of elevated and ground-level rail tracks.
Thus, allow me to recognize the DOTR once again for reaching this milestone major investment. With the signing of these three contract packages that cover a total of around 14.9 kilometers of at-grade and railway viaduct structures,
President Marcos also called on all concerned agencies and other stakeholders to work together in addressing potential challenges on the commencement of the civil works for the railway project. The president acknowledged the plight of informal settler families who will be affected by the construction of the railway system and assured that those in need of assistance are being addressed by the national government and local governments. The president also sought the continued patience and understanding of the public on the said project.
these are the inevitable consequences of those that of this large project. But it is something that we have to go through if we are going to complete the projects as they have been designed, and we will to be able to reap the benefits in the longer term.
Meanwhile, President Marcos expressed his gratitude to the government's partners in realizing the project and mentioned that it was made possible through the country's active partnership with the Asian Development Bank and the Japan International Cooperation Agency.
Let me also, of course, express my gratitude to the PT Adhi Kanya Persero and PTPP Persero TBK joint venture, the Leighton Contractors Asia Limited, the first Balfour Incorporated joint venture, for working with us on these sections covered by the contracts that we have signed today.
Marcos emphasized that South Commuter Railway project aims to decongest Metro Manila's main thoroughfares, provide comfortable transport alternatives, and spur economic activities in the area. For God and for my beloved Philippines, this has been Crisalyn Catarong, SMNI News.
President Bongbong Marcos has signed an executive order aimed at facilitating the entry of investments into the country. MJ Mondihar has the details.
According to the Anti-Red Tape Authority, or ARTA, the country is losing a significant amount of funds from foreign investors who are hesitant to do business due to various reasons, such as red tape and slow government process. This is further exacerbated by corruption within government agencies.
Ako po ay sigurado na millions and billions ang nawawala sa kaban ng bayan pagpatuloy ang red tape at corruption.
To prevent the waste of foreign investments, President Bongbong Marcos on Thursday presented a solution. In a hotel in Pasay, the president led the launching and covenant signing of Executive Order Number 18. The EO will establish green lanes to expedite the licensing and permitting processes for foreign investors.
And so when we say that there will be one avenue, one lane, one green lane, is that we establish a system whereby our potential investors will go to the DTI, will go to ARTA, will go to wherever the appropriate department is. That department will then take on that load and say, whenever you have we will be the ones to call our counterparts in the other departments.
Previously, applicants would have to navigate through various agencies to apply for permits. But now, according to the president,
we will go there, get the documentary requirements, get the signatures that are needed, and anytime that you have a problem, you come to one person. You have one person, one agency that you will talk to. And we will take care of it from our end.
President Marcos continues to monitor the results of the green lanes. In fact, the DTI Board of Investments will establish a one-stop action center for strategic investments, serving as a single entry point for all qualified projects and investments. This will be accompanied by the launch of electronic submission and issuance of permits, clearances, payments, certifications, and other documentary requirements. For Sun Asia Energy Inc., the company finds the president's program beneficial, especially since it covers almost all government agencies.
Very important siya kasi meron tayong tinatawag na cost of money na pag naglagay ka ng iyong investment, syempre, kailangan mong gastusin para naman matayuin mo yung project mo. Nagtatagal yun. So yung cost of money mo, medyo tumataas.
Covers national government agencies, GOCC, saka LGUs. So lahat covered except judiciary saka legislature.
With that, the Marcos administration remains steadfast in their commitment to use the full potential of the country to be the #1 investment hub in the next 6 years. For Ganamabalo Philippines, MJ Mondiha, SMNI News.
A Taiwan-bound passenger was full of resentment and became depressed after being offloaded and was allegedly asked for 10 birth certificates by an immigration officer. However, the Bureau of Immigration denies the said claims. This report from Jason Rubico.
Amy Liao's cousin's plan to go to Taiwan for a 2-week vacation was postponed. According to Amy's story, her cousin was offloaded twice after failing to provide the 10 birth certificates required by the immigration officer to prove the relationship between the two of them as relatives. This would have been Amy's cousin's first out-of-the-country trip, and because of what happened, her cousin became depressed and resentful.
Depressed po siya, parang disappointed kasi nandun po yung feeling niya na porket mahirap lang ako, ganito na yung judge sa akin. Sumama talagang loob niya. Kasi kumbaga, yun nga ang feeling niya, parang sobrang liit ng tingin, parang na-degrade yung yung pagkatao niya.
The Bureau of Immigration denied that their officer asked for 10 birth certificates from Amy's cousin. Immigration Deputy Spokesperson Melvin Mabulak said they saw that the said passenger had red flags. Apart from failing to prove her relationship with her cousin, who is in Taiwan, they found out that the passenger was not really going on vacation there but was actually looking for a job.
During the interview, na-mention doon sa document na one of the purposes ay kung may pagkakataon maghanap ng trabaho.
The law recognizes the right of anyone to travel outside the country, but Mabulak said that it was stated in the en-banc decision on the Supreme Court on December 13, 2011 that the Bureau of Immigration can offload passengers on 3 grounds. 2 of them, he said, are the doubtful purpose of travel and possible victim of trafficking.
Because the nature ng agency is preventive. Hindi na natin aantayin. Yan ang ginagawa ng immigration. At doon namin nakita na isa yan sa bakit po hindi ang gobyerno o nag-aalaw na ikaw ay pupunta, magtatrabaho lang na hindi ka dadaan sa POA. Bakit po? Kasi walang guarantee, walang accountable local agency na mananagot sa'yo. Something happens to you sa abroad.
But for Amy, the Bureau of Immigration is just making an excuse to clear the agency's name from offloading her cousin.
They just trying to clean, no? Dinilinis lang nilang pangalan nila na ito na wala silang mali sa ginawa nila, but para sa akin, I don't think so magsisinungaling ang pinsan ko.
We understand her emotion, but it is in the guidelines, Memorandum Circular 035, and we implement.
Amy is asking the Bureau of Immigration to have a specific guidelines and a checklist of documents that a passenger needs to bring abroad so that the immigration officers don't ask for different requirements.
Kailangan pare-pareho lahat ang hinihingi. Hindi yung hinihingi nila yung iba-iba pa na wala, hindi madadala ng tao.
It can be recalled that a certain traveler's complaint went viral online when she did not make it to her flight after an immigration officer asked for her yearbook. The Bureau of Immigration has reminders for passengers traveling outside the country to avoid being flagged or offloaded.
Pag pumupunta tayo sa immigration, ensure na kumpleto yung dokumento nyo. If you're asked, be truthful. Magsabi kayo. At be consistent. Tinitingnan ng Bureau of Immigration, hindi lang dokumento. We look at the person. Ano ba yung kanyang behavior? Sino kasama? We look at the effects. Anong mga dokumento? Tickets? Sinong bumili? Anong ginamit ng monetary unit? Statement. Anong sinasabi niya?
For God and my beloved Philippines, I am Jason Rubrico, SMNI News.
President Volodymyr Zelensky had a more conciliatory tone in the second day of the NATO summit, and this is after he criticized NATO leaders for not providing his country with a clear timeline for membership in the alliance, saying that it is unprecedented and absurd. Carlo de la Peña tells us more.
Zelensky has accused NATO of not showing enough respect for its unwillingness for the immediate membership for Ukraine. The Ukrainian president made the remarks as NATO kicked off its summit in Vilnius, Lithuania. Citing signals he had received which indicated that Ukraine would not be given an invitation of any sort to join NATO. In a statement on social media, Zelensky said, and quote, "We value our allies, we value our shared security, and we always appreciate an open conversation. Ukraine will be represented at the NATO summit in Vilnius because it is about respect, but Ukraine also deserves respect. It's unprecedented and absurd when a time frame is not set neither for the invitation nor for Ukraine's membership, while at the same time vague wording about conditions is added even for inviting Ukraine." End of quote. Zelensky also claimed that NATO's indecisiveness was a sign of the bloc's weakness. Reports citing the most recent version of NATO's draft communique states that it will be in a position to extend an invitation to Ukraine when allies agree and conditions are met. However, Zelensky hits out at NATO for its seemingly unreadiness to neither invite the country to the alliance nor to make it a member of it. According to the Ukrainian president, this means that a window of opportunity is being left to bargain Ukraine's membership in NATO in negotiations with Russia. The Ukrainian president's remarks did not go unnoticed by NATO, with a political report citing an unnamed senior diplomat from Central Europe saying that Zelensky was going too far and that such remarks is not a thoughtful and fair approach from him. U.S. Republican Senator Rand Paul also criticized Zelensky, saying that the Ukrainian president might need to recalibrate his complaints to avoid alienating his Western allies. Paul said, and quote, "We've given them $100 billion, and he has the audacity to be brazen as to tell us we'd better speed it up? I'd say that's audacious. I'd say it's brazen, and that's not very grateful for the $100 billion that we've given him so far. End of quote. Meanwhile, NATO has reaffirmed its readiness to give Ukraine membership at some point in the future, but it will be allowed to bypass the bloc's Membership Action Plan, or MAP, which is usually required for candidate members. NATO's statement read, end quote, "We reaffirm the commitment we made at the 2008 summit in Bucharest that Ukraine will become a member of NATO. And today we recognize that Ukraine's path to full Euro-Atlantic integration has moved beyond the need for the Membership Action Plan." End of quote. NATO said Ukraine has become increasingly interoperable and politically integrated with the US-led bloc, but outlined Ukraine's need for more democratic and security sectoral reforms. It can be remembered that NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said that NATO must first ensure that Ukraine achieves a victory in its fight with Russia. However, the NATO chief warned that if Ukraine did not succeed, then its membership in the alliance will be out of the question. Reporting, this has been Carlo de la Peña, SMNI News.
Still on the post-NATO summit, a Canadian lawyer criticized the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, over its expansion, saying that it is an aggressive military alliance rather than a defensive one. Andrea Santos reports.
Canadian lawyer Dimitri Lascaris said NATO is a source of instability across the world and said that the U.S. wants to perpetuate its global hegemony through the Russia-Ukraine conflict.
Its real objective in Ukraine is to perpetuate the era of United States global hegemony, which began with the fall of the Soviet Union by the United States government and Western governments in order to weaken a geopolitical rival. And when this is finished, they could not care less about what happens to Ukraine.
Dimitri Lascaris, a journalist and activist, said that many Western countries are sending weapons to the Ukrainian frontliners, and this includes NATO member Canada. But Lascaris said that such move only prolongs the crisis and pointed out NATO's records in other countries like Libya and Afghanistan only proved its damage to world peace and the lives of the people.
The greatest threat, frankly, to Canadian democracy is to the south of our border, and it's called the United States government. Well, let's look at NATO's record in this part of the world. What did NATO do to Libya? They destroyed Libya. What did NATO do to Afghanistan after 20 years of warfare and probably several $1 trillion of expenditure? They left Afghanistan in smoking ruin. NATO is clearly a source of instability. It is an aggressive military alliance. It is not defensive.
Reporting, this is Andrea Santos, SMNI News.
Russia announced that it will take security-related retaliatory measures once Sweden joined NATO. Jane Conita has the details.
When talking about what consequences Sweden's accession to NATO would have for Russia, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that Moscow would take measures similar to those that are being planned regarding Finland's membership to the alliance. It can be remembered that both Sweden and Finland submitted their NATO application last year. However, their bid was blocked by Turkey because it wanted both countries to designate Kurdish organizations as terrorists, as well as extradite individuals who were involved in the coup attempt that happened in 2016. But on Monday, Turkey agreed to lift its veto on Sweden's NATO admission after President Recep Tayyip Erdogan talked with Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson together with NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg and European Council President Charles Michel. During their discussions, Sweden promised not to support organizations designated as terrorists by Turkey and also to provide all possible assistance regarding Turkey's integration to Europe. On the other hand, Russia has repeatedly warned that NATO expansion would lead to a retaliation as it sees NATO as a hostile military bloc and a geopolitical tool of the United States used to wage a proxy war against Russia in Ukraine. NATO member Turkey, on the other hand, maintained a neutral stance on the Russia-Ukraine conflict and has become a mediator between both countries on several occasions, including the Black Sea grain deal. But Turkey earned the ire of Russia after ex-Azov commanders went home to Ukraine with President Volodymyr Zelensky last week. The ex-Azov commanders, along with 2,500 Ukrainian servicemen, were handed over to Turkey in a prisoner swap mediated with Ukraine, which Ankara mediated. The agreement was that Ankara would host them until the conflict is over. Peskov said Russia had not been informed about the matter and the agreement was violated by both Ukraine and Turkey. The Kremlin spokesman also claimed that NATO pressured Turkey to violate the agreement to demonstrate solidarity with the alliance ahead of the summit in Lithuania. Adding to Russia's ire was Erdogan's green light to send Sweden's bid for ratification to the national parliament ahead of the NATO summit in Vilnius. And earlier on the same day, the Turkish president linked his country's approval with it making progress towards their membership in the European Union. Brussels and the NATO chief denied the connection, but the latter suggested that Sweden could help Turkey improve relations with the European Union, particularly in customs relations or a possible visa-free travel agreement. To this, the Kremlin said that although Russia realizes that Turkey has commitments as a NATO member, Peskov urged Turkey to look realistically about its chances of joining the EU. Peskov then said, and quotes, "Calling a spade, nobody wants to see Turkey in Europe. I am referring to Europeans." End of quote. Reporting, this has been Jane Conita, SMNI News.
Prime Minister Hun Sen reiterated his appeal against using forbidden weapons of war by urging NATO member states to oppose America's plan to provide cluster bombs to Ukraine. Sandy Abuela reports.
As the two-day North Atlantic Treaty Organization kicked off in Lithuania, Cambodia Prime Minister Hun Sen urged NATO and U.S. allies to dissuade U.S. in its plan to send cluster munitions to Ukraine. Prime Minister Hun Sen opposed America's plan to send deadly cluster bombs to Ukraine in the fight against Russia. Following the announcement of U.S. transfer of $800 million worth of cluster munitions to Ukraine, Hun Sen urged member states to oppose this plan. In a tweet, he said, quote, "On behalf of the head of the royal government of Cambodia, I would like to continue to call on NATO member states and some U.S. allies, including the United Kingdom, Spain, Germany, and Canada, all of which are signatories to the Convention of the Prohibition of the Cluster Munitions, to take responsibility and participate in preventing U.S. President Joe Biden and the President of Ukraine to use this deadly weapon. I know for sure that Cambodia is small and weak, but out of compassion for the people of Ukraine, I call on the President of the United States, the donors, and the President of Ukraine, the recipient, to refrain from using cluster munitions in this war, because the real victims are the Ukrainian people." End of quote. The Cambodian Prime Minister said that the pain of the country in the 1970s, in which U.S. dropped cluster bombs, is still felt after more than 50 years ago and completely not yet been eradicated. Meanwhile, Natalia Shinkina, the deputy head of mission and political counselor of the Embassy of Ukraine in Vietnam, said that the Ukraine understands the concerns of Prime Minister Hun Sen, but likely said that there are not so many options apart from using the cluster munitions. Shinkina said, and the need of these cluster bombs was seriously taken after weighing carefully and confirmed that the specified munition at this stage of repelling Russians meets the most urgent needs of Ukrainian forces. The U.S. will send cluster munitions to Ukraine as part of a new military aid package. President Joe Biden in an interview said that they've run out of ammo, that's why they have decided to provide such weapons. Meanwhile, the Cambodian Mine Action Center conducted a training on the use of lineman detection equipment for the State Emergency Service of Ukraine. The equipment used in the training was developed in Japan and is expected to improve through the use of radar that can determine the shapes of the mine even if it's still buried. This training was the result of the joint commitment between Prime Minister Hun Sen, the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Cambodia, and Prime Minister Kishida Fumio of Japan in their bilateral meeting during the 2022 ASEAN summits and other related summits in Cambodia. Rika Prichinumpen, Sandy Abuela, SMNI News, Cambodia.
Decades have passed and removing unexploded ordnance is still a problem in Laos after the United States dropped millions of it during the Vietnam War. Jane Torzar reports.
Laos continues to grapple with accidents related to unexploded ordnance or UXOs from the Vietnam War, although 5 decades have passed after the signing of the Paris Peace Accords that led to the full withdrawal of American troops in the country. Laos is the most heavily bombed country in the world per capita. Throughout 1964 to 1973, over 2 million tons of ordnance were dropped on Laos. Of this number, 30% failed to explode. Over 270 million cluster munitions were dropped from U.S. warplanes, leaving an estimated 80 million live bomblets scattered and buried around the Southeast Asian country. And around 25% of the national territory of Laos is still littered with unexploded ordnance, with Chiang Quan province in the northeastern part of the country, on the border with Vietnam, being the hardest hit area. The government of Laos established UXO Lao in 1996 to investigate, detect, and destroy bombs left by American troops.
โดยเฉพาะช่วงระยะการกดกู้อยู่ภาคสนามซึ่งก็ได้เฮ็ดให้พนักงานพวกเขาเสียชีวิตและบาดเจ็บ
รู้สึกย้านแต่ย้านมีพี่น้องหรือว่าชาวบ้านนะเกิดอุบัติเหตุเนาะแห่งจูงใจก็คือว่าเขาได้เข้าอยากสมัครเข้ามาช่วยเหลือ
The program is expected to take another 100 years to complete due to the complex terrain of mountainous areas and limited manpower and financial support. According to the Lao Ministry of Labor and Social Welfare, over 1.8 million UXO devices had been cleared from 79,599 hectares of land from 1996 to February of this year. It can be remembered that many countries and organizations across the globe opposed the United States' decision to provide cluster munitions to Ukraine amid the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia. Butlangan Common Invention Patyat Lao Common Laikan Jane Torzar SMNI News, Lao.
The Philippine Departments of Justice and Agriculture joined forces to promote food security and help persons deprived of liberty to make a livelihood. This report from Hannah Jane Sancho.
The Department of Agriculture and the Department of Justice launched the RISE project as part of the Marcos administration's goal to achieve food security as well as rehabilitative justice by helping persons deprived of liberty in the Bureau of Corrections. The Bureau of Plant Industry and Bureau of Corrections signed an agreement to witness the Reformation Initiative for Sustainable Environment for Food Security, or RISE project, witnessed by President Bongbong Marcos in Malacanang. The program aims to utilize or rehabilitate arable lands within the reservation of the Bureau of Corrections and penal farms located in various parts of the country. Justice Secretary Jesus Crispin Remulla touted the message read by Justice Undersecretary Raul Vasquez in Malacanang about the program of the Marcos administration due to the cooperation of various government agencies aiming to achieve food security and opportunity for persons deprived of liberty to have a job before they are released from prison.
I am sure that the Department of Justice and the Department of Agriculture, together with the other agencies, are proud to embark on this journey together, leveraging our expertise and resources to ensure a sustainable environment for food security and at the same time promoting the reformation and rehabilitation of our persons deprived of liberty in our Bureau of Corrections system.
The program aims to help strengthen Philippine food production and achieve food security and sustainability in the country. The government aims to start the RISE project in Laoag Prison and Penal Farm located in Puerto Princesa City, Palawan. Around 28,700 hectares of land will be cultivated, which will be divided into 4 zones or districts: Iwahig Prison and Penal Farm zones, and these are Central Sub-Colony with 3,824 hectares, Montibla Sub-Colony with 6,932 hectares, Inagawan Sub-Colony with 11,162.54 hectares, and Santa Lucia Sub-Colony with 6,870 hectares. Aside from the food security, the RISE project also aims to give PDLs the opportunity for adequate training for livelihood before they are reintegrated back to the society. The RISE project offers livelihood programs for PDLs PDLs, including agricultural production training, horticultural therapy, and vocational gardening under the Work Livelihood Program of the Bureau of Corrections. The project was also created for the country to have a sufficient supply of fruits and vegetables throughout the year for all Filipinos. RISE project also initiates the Agriculture Department's National Urban and Peri-Urban Agriculture and High-Value Crops Development Program interventions and management systems that can be replicated in other Bureau of Corrections facilities across the country. President Marcos is hoping that the RISE project can help encourage various sectors to promote programs for the benefit of every Filipino.
I hope that the RISE project will encourage more public-private partnerships and inspire our people to pursue activities that will leave a lasting impact on our society. With us striving towards a shared vision, I am confident that we can build a nation that provides an equitable and egalitarian society for our people, that provides opportunities for all, and ignites our people's faith in their potential to transform our society for the better.
The Marcos administration believes that the RISE project will have a significant contribution to addressing the challenges being faced by the Philippine agricultural sector caused by the El Nino, as this phenomenon is currently considered as a threat to the food security of the country. For God and my beloved Philippines, this has been Hannah James Sancho, SMNI News.
Following a series of successful Philippine economic briefings earlier this year in an effort to woo global investors, the country's economic team is now in Canada to promote investment opportunities. Details of this report from Merx Buzarang.
Recently, the Philippine economic team has briefed international business and financial communities in North America on the latest developments concerning the country's economic performance, investment opportunities, and the administrator's development plan. Philippine Department of Budget and Management or DBM Secretary Amena Pangandaman has presented to global investors the Philippines' priority expenditures in the fiscal year 2023 national budget and talked about how these expenses will unfold in the realization of the goals in the national strategy for development from 2023 to 2028. Department of Finance or DOF Secretary Benjamin Jokno delivered the keynote address, while Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas or BSP Governor Eli Remolona Jr. discussed the performance and outlook of the monetary, external, and financial sectors. In addition, National Economic and Development Authority or NEDA Secretary Arsenio Balisacan covered infrastructure, investment, and development. Thursday's event at the Fairmont Royal York in Toronto, Canada comes after the Philippine economic team had a series of successful briefings in Europe, Washington, D.C., and Singapore earlier this year. It can be noted that economic managers are expecting the Philippine economy to expand by 6 to 7% in 2023 after it accelerated by 6.4% in this year's first quarter. To add, the Philippine economic team is also expected to join a panel discussion on the country's economic outlook and investment opportunities moderated by DBM Undersecretary Margaret Salcedo and BSP Managing Director Tony Lambino, as well as an additional panel discussion on the private sector's views on the Philippine economic development agenda and investment climate. For my God and my beloved Philippines, this has been Merx Buzarang, SMNI News, Canada.
Amid the ongoing rise in bird flu outbreaks, the World Health Organization has raised the alarm that this is posing an increased risk to humans. This report from Sigrid Castaneda.
The World Health Organization has issued a warning about the increasing spread of bird flu among mammals and has called for worldwide collaboration to address this issue. The H5N1 strain of avian influenza or bird flu was first identified in 1996 and continues to be significant concern. However, according to the WHO, the recent rise in infections among mammals raises concerns about the virus potentially infecting humans more easily. Though human cases of the virus are rare, they are severe and have a high mortality rate. Reports revealed that most cases are linked to close contact with infected birds and contaminated environments. It is crucial to monitor any genetic changes that may make transmission easier among mammals, including humans. That is why the WHO, along with the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations and the World Organization for Animal Health, urges everyone to protect animal population and human health. In line with this, the WHO, FAO, and WOAH are here to support countries in implementing necessary measures and providing guidance on prevention, surveillance, and control strategies to combat the virus. This is Sigrid Castañeda reporting, SMNI News.
Arabic users can now take advantage of Google's artificial intelligence chatbot as it expanded further to 50 countries. Here's my report. Google has announced a significant update for AI chatbot Bard. The ChatGPT rival has now expanded to 50 more countries, including all 27 EU nations and Brazil. It is now available in more than 40 languages, including Arabic and Hebrew, and is being introduced in Europe for the first time. The AI chatbot also boosts new features, which include image analysis, voice reading, and customization options. Bard and ChatGPT are human-sounding programs that use generative artificial intelligence, or AI, to hold conversations with users and have sparked global excitement, tempered with caution, since they were launched. This is Vhal Divinagracia, reporting SMNI News. Meanwhile, the United Kingdom's Defense Secretary Ben Wallace made a suggestion saying that Ukrainian officials should show gratitude for weapons donated to them. Jane Cognita for the rest of this report.
UK Defense Secretary Ben Wallace suggested that Ukraine should adopt a less demanding tone when it comes to speaking to other countries that are providing them weapons to fight against Russia. Wallace suggested that Ukraine should show more gratitude for Western support and stop treating allies and to stop treating them like the online delivery service Amazon. Wallace's remarks, quoted by the media, was made during an event on the Vilnius NATO summit sidelines on Wednesday. Wallace is known to be a vocal supporter of Ukraine. However, he said that it would help Ukraine's cause if they displayed more gratitude. According to the UK Defense Minister, and quote, "Sometimes you are asking countries to give up their own stocks. Sometimes you have to persuade lawmakers on Capitol Hill in America. You have to persuade doubting politicians in other countries that it is worth it." End of quote. Wallace said he heard complaints from American counterparts that Kyiv was treating their country like the Amazon store despite providing billions of dollars worth of military assistance. Wallace confirmed that this was indeed true and that he had been personally subjected to such treatment by Kyiv officials. He then recalled driving 11 hours to meet with a delegation in June, but only to be given a list of requests. It can be noted that U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan made a similar comment in Lithuania, saying that, quote, "The American people do deserve a degree of gratitude from the U.S. government for their willingness to step up and aid Ukraine, and from the rest of the world as well." Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky changed his tune after reports say that Western leaders told him to cool down. Following Wallace's remarks, Zelensky at a press conference said that he has always been thankful to the West for providing weapons, ammo, and all other assistance. In a press conference, Zelensky said, and quotes, "I don't clearly understand the questions. We have always been grateful and always are grateful. I simply don't know how else we should be grateful. We can wake up in the morning and thank the minister. Have him write to me how to be grateful and I will be grateful." End of quote. Zelensky has criticized the U.S. and its allies for not providing enough support or for providing it too slowly. It can be remembered that Zelensky blamed the delays in providing military assistance to them. He earlier said Ukraine had hoped to launch its counteroffensive against Russia much sooner. However, it was delayed due to the lack of Western-supplied weapons and allowed Russia to create stronger defenses. The Ukrainian president also criticized NATO leaders for failing to provide a timeline or a roadmap for Ukraine's accession to NATO, as Kyiv still needs to meet some conditions to qualify as a NATO member. To this, Zelensky called it as unprecedented and absurd. Reporting, this has been Jane Conita, SMNI News.
Despite neighboring countries expressing their strong opposition to Japan's planned release of treated radioactive water, President Yoon Suk-yeol recently held talks with Prime Minister Fumio Kishida regarding the safety of the water discharge. Sherry Hayes tells us more.
Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida told South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol that the planned release of the Fukushima nuclear power plant's treated radioactive water is according to international safety standards. Kishida promised that Japan will take appropriate measures, which includes halting the release if it goes beyond the safety standards, despite the International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA, claiming that the release will not affect marine or human life given their assessment report of the treated water. Japan's neighboring countries still strongly oppose the decision. Yoon's office said that they asked the Japanese government to share real-time monitoring information with South Korea and allow their experts to participate in the safety checking process, despite him stating that he respects the UN agency's decision to allow Japan to proceed with the release. To recall, the IAEA has been conducting an independent safety review of the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant's radioactive wastewater for 2 years, before submitting it to Tokyo last week, which gave a green light for release this summer. It can be noted that some chemicals such as tritium are still present in the wastewater, despite methods that are being used to clean the radioactive substance. This raises concern from neighboring countries such as Russia, and just recently, China's Zhang Kejian slammed Japan's actions, calling it irresponsible as it could affect the environment and human health altogether. Seoul, Isubugo, Sherry Hayes, Imnida, SMNI News, South Korea.
Japanese citizens rallied in the streets of Tokyo to protest against their prime minister's attendance to the NATO Leaders Summit in Lithuania. Details of this report from Kent Hashimoto.
Prime Minister Fumio Kishida's attendance to the NATO's Leaders Summit in Lithuania marks the second consecutive year that a Japanese Prime Minister has attended such event, causing great dissatisfaction among Japanese citizens. People were holding banners that read "No Wars" and "No to Revision of the Constitution," and chanted slogans to oppose the Japanese government's continuous alignment with NATO and significant increase in defense spending. They feared that these actions could lead Japan down a dangerous path towards militarization.
第二次世界大戦で日本が一体どういうことをしたのかということだというふうに思うんですよね。それは朝鮮半島に対する植民地支配であるし、あるいは中国に対する侵略戦争というふうなことを、5月の広島サミットから今回の岸田首相による NATO 会議出席に至るまでね、岸田の言うようなこの自国を守るためのそういった戦争では全くないということだというふうに思います。全世界の人々がこんな戦争には絶対反対なんだと言って自分の国で戦争反対の声を上げていく。
Earlier this year, NATO announced the decision to set up a liaison office in Tokyo in 2024 to boost bilateral ties. However, many protesters complained about the potential NATO office in Japan, calling it a preparation for war.
ところに、岸田首相が参加するっていうこと、それから東京に NATO の事務所を作るっていう話もありますけど、それは要するに戦争の加担するといいますか、参加していくっていうことであって、そういうことは断固として許せないと、そういうふうに考えて。
今 NATO という北大西洋条約機構という形で日本からは遠い国で起こっているはずの戦争に日本がわざわざ出かけていく。そして日本に NATO の事務所さえ作ったらどうかとまで言う。なぜそんなことを言うのかといえば、ウクライナ戦争をアジアに持ってきたい。それを許さない。嘘を見抜いて暴露して訴えて、多くの人々が心を一つにして手をつなぐことを今やろう。
今私たちが本当に非正規職とかで食べていけない状態で困ってるのにね、それを全然関係なしで軍事費だけ上げていく、これ自体がもう本当に戦争そのものだと思うしね、そういう危機感で私も集会に参加しているところなんです。
Meanwhile, prior to attending the NATO Leaders Summit, the Prime Minister of Japan held talks with his Polish counterpart, Mateusz Morawiecki, to further deepen their ties as well as to address ongoing issues. Kishida stopped by Warsaw to meet with Morawiecki to talk about security in the region, as Poland's neighboring country, Ukraine, has been fighting to repel Russia for almost 17 months. The two prime ministers also had discussions on strengthening their economic ties after stagnating in the pandemic. Poland, on the other hand, welcomed a recent large investment by Japanese air conditioning giant Daikin Industries. In addition, Kishida and Morawiecki also agreed to increase cooperation in areas of advanced technology, cybersecurity, liquid gas, and railways. Kishida has visited Poland back in March when he showed Japan's support to Poland's military and humanitarian assistance to Ukraine, while also announcing a special financial program to aid Poland's efforts. Meanwhile, protesters said that the Japanese government is used by the U.S. as a pawn to increase defense spending while ignoring people's livelihood. SMNI News, Japan.
North Korea confirms firing an intercontinental ballistic missile Wednesday towards the Sea of Japan. Gads Inoue files this report.
The Democratic People's Republic of Korea confirmed that it has successfully fired a new solid-fuel intercontinental ballistic missile, or ICBM, Wednesday outside Japan's exclusive economic zone, and currently, Japan's Defense Ministry is analyzing the missile's capability. The North Korean state-run media, Korea Central News Agency or KCNA, disclosed Thursday that the solid-fuel ICBM fired Wednesday near Japan's exclusive economic zone or EEZ, 250 kilometers west of Hokkaido's Ukushiri Island, is a Hwasong 18. North Korea's first solid-fuel intercontinental ballistic missile that is harder to detect and intercept than that of North Korea's conventional liquid fuel missiles. The test fire, which was observed by Kim Jong-un himself, comes as the country's response to the strengthened security cooperation between Japan, the United States, and South Korea, KCNA added. Analysts say that Hwasong 18 allows North Korea to launch long-range nuclear strikes more easily and quickly. The missile traveled about 1,000 kilometers and reached an altitude of 6,600 kilometers and flew for about 75 minutes. According to the state-run media, the first stage of the test fire was designed to fly at a normal angle, while the second and third aims to fly at increased angle called lofted trajectory. It can be noted that North Korean Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un said a series of stronger military offensive will be launched until the U.S. and South Korea admit the shameful defeat of their hostile policy toward North Korea. According to Japan's Defense Ministry, the solid-fuel ballistic missile can reach any part of the United States, depending on factors such as the warhead's weight, as the missile is capable of reaching a range of over 15,000 kilometers. Ijo Nihon kara Gazi no Hikokota shimashita. SMNI News, Japan.
The UN Security Council announced that it would convene a meeting Thursday to discuss North Korea's latest intercontinental ballistic missile launch. Hans Marshall files this report.
North Korea's intercontinental ballistic missile, or ICBM, launch Wednesday is the country's fourth this year that is in breach of Security Council resolutions. The launch was confirmed by North Korea's state media, Korean Central News Agency, or KCNA. And due to this, the UN Security Council will publicly convene an urgent meeting. The assembly comes following requests from Albania, France, Malta, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the United States. According to reports, the missile was fired at around 10 a.m. from Pyongyang, with the projectile flying about 1,000 kilometers at a maximum altitude of 6,600 kilometers before landing in waters between the Korean peninsula and Japan. Some experts claim that the North likely launched its developmental road-mobile Hwasong 18 ICBM, a type of solid-fuel weapon that is hard to detect and intercept compared to its liquid-fuel ICBMs. Previously, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un claimed that the said missile was the most powerful in its nuclear forces. Meanwhile, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres condemned the launch and called for North Korea to comply with its international obligations and resume dialogue. This is Hans Marshall reporting, SMNI News.
Australia will be supplying Ukraine with dozens more Bushmaster vehicles to help the fight against the Russian invasion. Sheena Selim reports.
The Albanese government will be sending 30 more highly coveted Bushmaster armored personnel carriers to Ukraine in support of the nation's defense against Russia's illegal invasion. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese announced he was pleased to gift 30 additional Bushmasters to Ukraine following his meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the NATO summit in Lithuania. Albanese said Bushmasters are highly valued by Ukrainian defense personnel and have saved their lives. The military vehicles are built in Bendigo and have been used in Ukraine to move troops in and out of frontline areas and have also been deployed as ambulances and command, patrol, and support vehicles. The Prime Minister said this latest donation was worth about $100 million and would mean Australia was now committed to providing 120 of the troop carriers after Australia's previous donation of 90 Bushmasters to Ukraine. Australia has provided more than $710 million in military aid, with overall support reaching a total of $890 million. Defense Minister and Deputy Prime Minister Richard Marles said the latest announcements showed Australia's firm stance in supporting Ukraine in the face of a Russian invasion. Reporting from New South Wales, this is Sheena Selim, SMNI News, Australia.
The United States will move ahead with the transfer of F-16 jets to Turkey just a day after Ankara gave the green light for Sweden to join the world's largest military alliance. Kirby Trinidad has the news.
As Turkey ended its opposition to Sweden's NATO membership, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin announced it is ready to discuss Ankara's long-awaited desire to purchase 40 F-16 jets from the United States, a move opposed by U.S. lawmakers for several reasons, including Erdogan's resistance on Stockholm's NATO bid. In October 2021, Turkey requested to buy 40 new Lockheed Martin F-16 fighter jets, as well as 80 modernization kits for its existing warplanes from the United States to upgrade its aging fleet. The deal, estimated at $20 billion, was supported by the Biden administration. Some lawmakers from the U.S. Congress, however, have opposed the F-16 sale due to Turkey blocking Sweden's NATO membership, its human rights record, and its relations with Greece, among other concerns. Both sides rejected any suggestion that F-16 sale was linked to Ankara's approval of Sweden's NATO accession. The Greek government, on the other hand, is following closely developments amid knowledge of Ankara's long-awaited plan to purchase F-16 jets from the United States. Reporting from Sweden, this has been Kirby Trinidad, SMNI News.
Southeast Asian countries are struggling to settle their differences in how to achieve peace in Myanmar. This story from Anisa de Guzman.
Foreign ministers of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, called for regional unity in addressing the conflict in Myanmar. The 10 member states of ASEAN, which includes Myanmar, have been pushing for the generals of the military junta to implement a 5-point peace plan. On Wednesday, foreign ministers representing the Southeast Asian bloc gathered in Jakarta for one of their regular conferences, where they emphasize unity in addressing the ongoing issue. Differences between ASEAN member states surfaced after Thailand's caretaker government invited the bloc's foreign ministers last month to an informal meeting with an aim of fully re-engaging with Myanmar's military rulers, with several leaders missing the talks or only sending representatives. ASEAN was also scheduled to hold meetings with ambassadors from the United States, China, Russia, and other major partners this week. The ASEAN ministers were expected to release a statement on their deliberations at a conference this week on Thursday, but no statement has been made public yet. Di siya Anisa de Guzman, ng Chakuntep Mahanakon, SMNI News, Pratatay, Sawadika.
The leader of a progressive party that won the most votes in Thailand's general elections in May failed to secure critical votes necessary for him to become the next prime minister. Chatmonggon Pesay Maguson tells us more.
Move Forward Party leader Pitha Limchalernrat has been nominated for Prime Minister at the opening of Parliament but failed to secure enough votes to get the coveted leadership post. Mr. Pitha only obtained 323 out of the 375 votes required on Thursday to become the next Prime Minister of Thailand. After hours of debate, the parliament proceeded to the voting process for the Prime Minister at around 5 p.m. Moreover, a senator resigned even before the voting could begin, reducing the total number of senators to 249. The PM frontrunner also faced last-minute legal challenges which could disqualify him, one of which centered around his controversial media shares but denied breaking any election rules. Another round of votes is expected on Wednesday of next week. Under Thailand's laws, Pitha is still eligible to become Prime Minister even if he is removed from Parliament. รายงานจากราชบุรี นายชัดมงคลพิสมัยโกศล SMNI ประเทศไทย สวัสดีครับ
The Treasury Chief of the United States warned that the country is still at risk of an economic downturn, saying that it's not off the table or cannot be ruled out yet. Hans Marshall reports.
Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen warned that the United States is not yet out of the possibility of an economic recession. Yellen, in an interview with an American broadcast network, said it's appropriate and normal for growth to be moderate. Just recently, according to a report, the economy only added 209,000 jobs in June, the weakest since December 2020. The unemployment rate slightly decreased from 3.7% in May to 3.6% in the same month. However, the added jobs were fewer than in previous months. Meanwhile, even though it began to ease, inflation was still high after prices rose 4% year over year in May. This is still double from the 2% target of the U.S. Federal Reserve. Taking this into account, Yellen pointed out that the inflation is too high and did not rule out a potential recession. In a statement, she said, "We have a healthy economy, a great labor market, inflation too high, and a concern of ours and the American people, but coming down over time." Last week, the central bank also warned that a recession this year is quite likely, but probably won't be deep or prolonged. Meanwhile, the Bank of America on Tuesday agreed to pay $250 million in fines, as well as compensation to settle claims that it systematically double-charged customers' fees. The bank also reportedly withheld promised credit card perks and open accounts without the authorization of customers. The said bank agreed to pay $100 million in restitution to harmed consumers. Another $150 million will be paid for civil penalties after the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and so Office of the Comptroller of the Currency said Bank of America violated numerous laws starting in 2012. This is Hans Marshall reporting, SMNI News.
The newly signed police cooperation deal between China and Solomon Islands triggered a new wave of concerns from Australia and the United States. The details from Sasha Hassa.
Canberra asked for transparency about the policing deal signed recently between Honiara and Beijing. Solomon Islands Prime Minister Manasseh Sugawara visited Beijing this week to deepen bilateral ties with Chinese allies. The visit resulted in the signing of 9 agreements, including a controversial police cooperation deal between Honiara and Beijing. The visit, however, triggered concerns among some Western nations. A spokesperson for Australia's Foreign Ministry revealed Canberra's concern about the development possibly inviting further regional contest, while a former U.S. ambassador said he is disturbed by the secrecy around the agreements. To counter China's influence, the U.S. opened its embassy in the Solomon Islands in February this year, while the Biden administration held its first United States Pacific Island Country Summit in September 2022, and pledged $810 million for its allies in the region. The deepening partnership between Solomon Islands and China in recent months has alarmed Western democracies, such as the US and Australia, especially after Sugavare called for a review of its security treaty with Canberra to address the changing security challenges faced by both countries. Reporting from Sydney, this has been Sasha Hassa, SMNI News, Australia.
Pastor Apollo C. Quiboloy, together with SMNI anchors Dr. Lorraine Badoy, Attorney Harry Roque, and Jeffrey K. Eric Celis, tackled John F. Kennedy Jr.'s peace speech in the latest episode of the Deep Probe. Here are some notable points tackled earlier. Let's watch this.
Ito yung espiritu ng Amerika ngayon na sinabi ni Robert Kennedy.
When you build empire by war,
yes,
it will come back to you and destroy your empire, even your own country.
So, kung ganon, palaging ganon ang sinabi ni Robert Kennedy dito, kung ganon tayo, sabi niya, that if we try that to make ourselves an imperial nation abroad, that we would turn into a surveillance state.
Yun.
Puro suspicion, kahit mabuti ang ginagawa mo, pag nasuspekan ka, titirahin ka na. That we would turn into a surveillance state, a garrison state. Ngayon, ang Pilipinas, mayroong 17 na EDCA sites. Nagiging garrison tayo. A security state at home. O pati sa kanila. And that we would also destroy our economy as happens with every empire. Democratic and Republican administrations have pushed NATO to Russia's borders, violating our own solemn promise from the early 90s when we pledged that if Russia made this terrible concession of moving 400,000 troops out of East Germany and allowing the unification of Germany under a NATO army, a hostile army, that we would commit that after that we would not move NATO 1 inch to the east. Sinabi niya, and I continue.
Claro, Pastor.
And I continue. James Baker gave that assurance, as did the British government officials and many, many others. And yet today, we have surrounded Russia. We have moved NATO not just 1 inch to the east, but 1,000 miles and 14 nations. We have surrounded Russia with missiles and military bases, something that we would never tolerate if the Russians did that to us. And statesmen from our government officials and think tanks lay out the goals for the Ukraine war. Regime change in Russia, the overthrow of Vladimir Putin. This is what President Biden has said is our purpose in the Ukraine. The disabling and exhaustion of the Russian military and the dismembering of the Russian Federation.
Which is clearly a foreign interventionist policy on the part of America, grounded on the policy of using war to coerce sovereign nations. That's the way they do it, their business 100 years ago. That's the way they're doing their business right now.
Nailagay natin ang sarili natin sa mga Ruso ngayon.
Yun.
Ano ba yung concern ng Russia ngayon? Ito nga yung kasaysayan eh. Pinabayaan na niya na mapunta sa NATO ang Germany. Umalis siya ng Eastern Germany, bagamat inoccupy niya Eastern Germany dahil natatakot siya na yung mga Amerikano at kanyang mga alay ay pwedeng lusubin siya at nasa tabi lang niyang teritoryo niyang Eastern Germany dahil nga doon sa pangako na hindi na sila pupunta doon sa Eastern Europe. Pero ngayon anong nangyari? Nag-expand ang NATO to 14 nations. Kasama na ngayon ng Sweden, kasama na ngayon ang Finland. Dati-rate ay neutral.
14 nations.
So ngayon, nakapaligid na talaga yan ng missiles sa Russia. Now, ilagay niyo yung sarili niyo sa posisyon ng mga Ruso. Ayaw niyo ng gera. Pero kapag ang mga missiles ay nakatutok na sa inyo, sa lahat ng iyong teritoryo, at ikaw ang pinakamaraming nuclear arsenal sa daigdig, hindi mo ba gagamitin?
Exactly, the point.
Yung sarili. Kaya nandyan po ngayon, yung napakatinding danger na baka nga magkaroon tayo ng nuclear war kasi nga pag nagkaroon ng feeling na desperado na ang Russia, gagamitin niya at mas marami siyang nuclear weapons ngayon kaysa sa Amerika.
Of course, we don't agree with what Putin has done. He's not the only madman here. So, kasi ang ginagawa kasi ng Amerika, they vilify the Russians, di ba?
Sila lang
They're the
masama.
only bad guys. They make it black and white, but that's not the truth. Ang layo sa katotohanan. It's America that's been doing all these machinations, no? And setting the theater for war all over the world. no, and the annihilation of the entire humanity.
Yes.
No? So,
And I can add to that,
Go ahead, Pastor.
Doc Lorraine, no? These provocations that we just read, na they would not move 1 inch to the east. And Robert Kennedy Jr. said, now we have moved thousands of miles to the east,
closer to the door of Russia.
14 nations around. So if you put your shoes on Vladimir Putin's,
yes, of course.
where are those missiles going?
Yeah.
And these are all NATO countries. Where are all of those missiles pointing? Naturally to Russia. And if you put yourself in Vladimir Putin's shoes, what would you think?
Yeah.
It's a provocation. It's a thing that will trigger me to just, go ahead and protect my country first.
Asked if America could still re-emerge as a moral leader authority of the world if it abandons its current war policy, Pastor Apollo said.
Agree ako. Kasi ganyan talagang paningin ko sa Amerika.
Dapat ito sila.
But, after 9/11, biglang nagbago ang Amerika.
Correct.
Ito yung delikado. Pagka nakikipaglaban ka sa iyong kalaban, mag-iingat ka na hindi ka maging kagaya nila.
Yeah.
That is what I remind our people. When we fight our enemy, let us be careful not to become like them.
Yeah.
We have to always be on the moral ground. Although, at times, you see that you are being deprived of the right to really defend or right to retaliate. So let us keep that. Kaya itong sinabi ni Jesus Christ na love your enemy, do good to them that hate you. There are gems of wisdom there.
Pastor, I have a question for you.
Yeah,
I'm curious. You really think that after all the crimes, the shameless war policies of America, all these things that they've done, napakaraming bansa, that they can still become a moral leader of the world if they follow what Robert Kennedy is suggesting?
Yeah, redeemable.
Curious.
I don't know about this.
Still a Christian nation.
I don't know about these Americans now, but maybe the next generation, if they would pick up on that, maybe a new generation of Americans would come and then pick up on that.
A new cultural value.
A new cultural value. Pero itong ngayon, siguro, mahirap nang baguhin ito. Kasi tulad ng sinasabi ni Atty. Harry Roque, it's all about economics. It's all about the money.
The money.
Kaya, walang kalaban, gagawa ka ng kalaban para magamit mo yung armas mo. In the American culture right now, I see the young people, they are deprived of love.
Meanwhile, Pastor Apollo also reiterated the foreign policy first established by former President Rodrigo Duterte.
True friendship is the respect of each one. When that mutual respect is gone, true friendship is not friendship anymore.
Yeah.
When you go beyond the border of mutual respect, that's abuse.
Abuse.
And I will not tolerate abuse in a friendship. And if I cannot go away from my first reaction when there is an abuse in a friendship is to get away from that kind of a relationship.
Correct.
But if I cannot get away from that kind of a relationship because my supposed to be friend threatened me that he will kill me if I will go away from him, that is not only abuse of friendship, but it is also terroristic friendship. The more that I will get away from you.
In the end, Pastor Apollo lauded Kennedy Jr. and hoped that he will continue his uncle, late President John F. Kennedy's legacy. The good pastor also called on the future leader of the U.S. to change its warmongering policy.
I respect you so much. I love you so much. When I become emotional. When I'm listening to your speech, when I listen to your speech on YouTube and Facebook, I have tears on my eyes because this is what I want America to be, like what you said here, like your uncle. I appreciate you for your perspective and your uncle who died and your father who also was assassinated. And I hope that you continue this legacy because this will change our attitude also towards America. And our attitude did not change, I mean. We still love you. We still love that nation where the Filipinos look up to. In my own estimation, that's my second home there. But this all changed in February 18 when the unexpected happened, that violence that happened to us changed our perspective of America, and that we don't want that. We don't want that. We want to look up to you as before. So by bringing this speech, I hope that you win as President of the United States and bring this perspective to all the world. And in case you don't win, anyone who wins as an American will also adapt to this kind of speech, to this kind of mental attitude, to this kind of emotional and psychological attitude that you will bring to all the world, because you have been given the grace of God to be the ruler of this world as a unipolar world. And you know that is now slipping out of your hands because of what you have done, because of what you have sown all over the world. So we want you to be where you are before. But if that does not happen, then there is no more chance for you to lead the world. No more moral authority to lead the world, and no more spiritual moorings to guide the world into what America was. Because America was founded fundamentally by the Christian principles of the founders and the framers of their Constitution. And that is now out there in the garbage. And what we see now is barbarism and the warmongering and the military-industrial complex that has engulfed that nation. We are praying for America. We are praying that Robert Kennedy Jr. with this kind, that's why itong speech niyang ito, hinimay-himay namin ngayon dito. Kasi napakaganda. Ganito dapat ang sanlibutan. Ganito dapat ang pananaw ng may mga kapangyarihan. Ang love, ang peace ay nagmumula sa pag-ibig.
And before we end, may be inspired with the message of the appointed Son of God. You cannot attain courage in the midst of peace. It is obtained in the midst of trouble. And that's all for today's edition of Newsline World. For more news update, you may visit SMNInewschannel.com or follow us on our official social media accounts in Rumble, Facebook, and Twitter. For God and my beloved country, the Philippines, I'm Vhal Divinagracia. Thank you for watching Newsline World, and thank you to our beloved Pastor Apollo C. Quiboloy, for the opportunity to be a part of this program. May you continue to listen in SMNI as it delivers nothing but fair, truthful, and balanced news, because SMNI is your source of